Okay, so we will be going through a tutorial on how to meditate with the goal of increasing your ability to focus your awareness and feel more relaxed and in control of your life. This is a method I found really useful. There's a million methods to meditate. Everyone tends to claim that theirs is the best. This method is kind of a distilled version of all the methods. These are a couple of the key attributes of almost every type of meditation. And so, my goal is to give you these keys so that you can develop your own way of meditating around some of the basics. So, step one. Step one will be to find a place and a time that you want to meditate in. By doing this, you're going to create a sacred space and a time dedicated to this activity. With repetition, this will make the process of getting into the meditation happen much more quickly. So, at first, it might be a little bit of a struggle. You might feel restless. You might feel like it's not going anywhere or like you're unable to relax. But that's totally normal. And by doing this, even after 2 days or just a couple days, you'll begin to start to feel the process happen more easily. Just in the same way that you go to a gym to go work out, and you might have a time that you like to do that, that is kind of programming your body to get in that space and do what it knows it's supposed to do once it gets there. This is the same idea of going to the gym to work out. You're going to go to your sacred space to do this meditation. So, step two, I think one of the dogs will be flying in and getting in trouble in a second here. But step two is to find a comfortable position to meditate in that will allow you to relax, but not so much that you fall asleep. A lot of people are under rested, and I think for that reason, if they relax a little too much, they tend to just pass out. And then you're spending your valuable meditating time sleeping. So, an example for myself is that I don't fall asleep that easily, so I don't worry about this as much. For that reason, I'll sit up, slightly reclined with my feet up. I find that really relaxing, but not so much so that I end up just falling asleep. So once you've found your place, your time, and a comfortable position to meditate in, I think it's important that we identify a central phrase to use during your meditation, along with some words that you can focus on towards the end of your meditation, um, and maybe your aspirations for those words. That might sound a little confusing, but I'll explain better. So your central phrase consists of two things: where you are now and where you aspire to be. So, um, an example for myself. This phrase can be just a couple words. It could be a few sentences, but I find it best to pick something that I can kind of quickly think of or quickly say out loud, that expresses where I am now and where I want to be. So, I am someone who wants to feel more peace of mind or more peace in my life in general. So, in order to do this, I think it's important to feel gratitude for the moment I'm already in. And because I believe that by feeling gratitude for any of the challenges or the struggles that I'm experiencing currently, those, if I have the right mindset, will lead me to feeling more peaceful. So, my central phrase would be: in gratitude, I find peace. That's just something I quickly came up with, but is just a perfect example of kind of what I'm describing. So that's my central phrase. In gratitude, I find peace. Now, I will identify some other words that hit on some key aspects of my life that I'm aspiring to improve in. This will be done towards the end of the meditation. These words I find best to categorize by mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical aspects of my life. So, for example, a mental aspect would be that I want to increase my ability to focus. I want to feel more focused, like I can concentrate better and hold a thought in my mind longer. So, my mental word will be focus. Emotionally, I think it's important to be in touch with your emotions and the emotions of the other people around you. So I want to feel connected to myself and others. So my emotional word will be connection. Spiritually, I think many of us are in very different points spiritually. Some of us feel very little spirituality, if at all. Some of us might feel very spiritual, but might want to increase that feeling. And to me, the word that comes to mind is feeling awareness. So if I'm not feeling spiritual, I might want to feel more aware of that spirituality. If I already am, I want to be aware of it so I can increase that feeling. So my spiritual word would be awareness. And physically, I think a lot of times I feel a lack of energy for the things I want to do. So for that reason, my physical word would be energized. So in what I've just covered, I have my central phrase, in gratitude, I find peace. I have a mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical word identified as well that embodies kind of where I am now and what I aspire to reach. So the next would be step 4, which would be beginning the meditation. Before you start, I think it's best to set a timer for as long as you think you're able to meditate. This is generally kind of decided by what your schedule is like, but typically I think 20 minutes has the strongest effect, and that's what I would recommend. If you can't do it, I think at the least, I think 10 minutes can still be very helpful. I recommend setting your timer, maybe giving it a couple extra minutes. So if I want to meditate for 20 minutes, I'll set it to 21 and a half minutes. That way I have enough time to set my phone, set it down somewhere else, let my phone worry about the time, and I'll go relax and do the meditation and not really worry about time at all. To begin my meditation, I get in my place, I'm doing it in my time, I get in my comfortable position, and then I begin by taking a slow, long, deep breath in and a slow, long, deep breath out. What I mean by slow and long is I think about 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out is pretty sufficient in taking a long breath in and out. It might be different for everyone depending on how shallowly they typically tend to breathe. And don't get worried about the amount of time you're doing either, just that they're slow and long. After doing this for probably a few minutes, you will most likely tend to feel a lot more relaxed than when you began. Even if you don't, that's okay. It's definitely part of the process. And the amount of time that this initial step of breathing will take to calm you down as you meditate more often should diminish over time and as you get more used to it. Once you're feeling that calmness, once you're feeling like you've done enough of the breathing in and out to put yourself in a different state of mind, that's when I begin my central phrase of where I am now and where I aspire to be. So an example of this is I might I'll take some long breaths in and some long breaths out for a couple minutes, and now I'm feeling ready to do my central phrase. So I'll take a long breath in, and then on my exhale, I'll say my central phrase. So that would be like, in gratitude, I find peace. And then I exhale, and I do it again. In gratitude, I find peace. Just like the initial step of the breathing, do this several times until you feel like these words are resonating with you, until you feel like they've become integrated into the activity that you're doing. And that sounds like, that's not very descriptive, but I'm sure that as you do this, your intuition or the feeling of like this feels right will begin to become much sharper. So you won't really have to worry about how long are my breaths, how many times am I doing my phrase. It won't really matter. And it'll differ every time you do it as you go along. So you've taken your long deep breaths. Now you've begun your deep breath in and your central phrase on the way out. And after you do this several times and you feel like that central phrase is integrated, take a long deep breath in and another deep breath out, and then you just sit there and continue to breathe that way. But don't think anything. And you'll notice that don't think anything is kind of a complicated thing to say, because typically when you try not to think anything, you realize that you're constantly thinking of something. But what this has done, the work you've done leading up to this moment, is a process of calming your mind to the point that when you stop saying your central phrase and you continue to just breathe, your mind will most likely be blank. There's nothing there. And sometimes this only lasts for 2 seconds, but other times this lasts for 2 minutes, which would be impressive. For me, especially at the beginning of meditating, it's probably about maybe 5 to 10 seconds before a thought bubbles up to the surface, is a way I like to say it. So I'll have done my breathing, I do my central phrases, I go back to breathing, my mind is completely blank, and after 10 to 15 seconds maybe, a thought will bubble up. If the thought that bubbles up is helpful to my central phrase, in gratitude I find peace. If that thought bubbles up and I intuitively know that whatever that thought is helpful to my phrase, I will acknowledge that thought, appreciate that I had it, and then just go back to breathing. Once I go back to breathing, I'll probably have another thought bubble up. Let's say this thought bubbles up and it's not helpful to my central phrase. An example of this would be, when am I going to let the dogs out? I need to go to the bathroom. I'm hungry. Anything like that. If a thought bubbles up like that that's not helpful to your central phrase, go back into the breathing and start the process again. Go back to breathing. Do that until you feel like the breathing, that you feel you're at a consistent pace with your breathing. Then start the central phrase again. Do that until that feels integrated. And once that feels integrated, go back to the breathing, have no thoughts, and see what bubbles up again. By doing this process, what you're doing is exercising kind of a mental muscle. And every time your thoughts stray away, this is actually very helpful, because this is an opportunity to get another rep in mentally. Every time it strays away, you might have the tendency to think, I can't get a hold of my mind. It's thinking all of these random things. This is so frustrating. It's not working. But really, every time your thoughts stray away, this is the opportunity you're looking for to pull your awareness back. Because what's happening is that you're aware of many things at the same time. And by doing this exercise, you're training the ability to focus your awareness on what you want to focus on, rather than let thoughts just come up and your awareness go where the thoughts want them to go. So I think that covers it for step 4. And so step 5 will be maybe something more advanced. And if you want to save this for maybe after a week of trying meditation, I'd even recommend that, because that's what I did. But it's totally up to everyone. So step 5 would be, you've already covered step 4, your breathing, your central phrase, letting thoughts bubble up, pulling them back. And now you should be getting kind of close to the end of your meditation. After doing it several times, you might begin to have an idea of when that timer might go off. But ideally, you're kind of you've lost track of time. So that's a good thing as well. But nearing the end of the meditation, you've gotten yourself into a mental state where I think your ability to focus has been increased. And so you're going to take advantage of that by remembering your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual aspirational words that you've come up with. So, an example of this would be I've gone through all the steps of my meditation, I'm nearing the end, and so I'll sit there and I'll start with my mental. I'm continuing to breathe in the same long, deep way that I have been up until this point. And maybe I'll take a long, deep breath in. And on the way out, instead of my central phrase, I'll say my mental word, which is focus. And in that moment, I'll really feel what it is to say focus in the way that I had thought about it, where I'm remembering how I feel now and acknowledging that that's okay. It's just part of the process to feel unfocused. And then visualize, maybe come up with a specific visualization of what it looks like to be focused. So maybe I'll think of myself reading and enjoying it. So I'll take a deep breath in, and then on the way out I'll say focus. And I'll think about where I am, and then I'll maybe imagine myself pleasantly reading a book. And so I've covered that one, and then I'll do the same thing with the emotional word, which would be connection. I'll imagine what I aspire to that would make me feel what it looks like to feel connected. So I'll think about how I feel now, and then I'll think about that feeling of connection that I'm aspiring to. And then I'll do this with the spiritual aspect, which is to feel aware, and my physical aspect, which is to feel energized. Like I said, I think this is maybe a little bit more advanced and doesn't need to be done. None of this stuff needs to be done, but like I said, these are all the basics, and I think they're the most helpful when creating your own way of meditating that is personal to you, because what you need is going to be different than what anybody else needs. But hopefully, by laying out steps 1 through 4, being finding a place and time, step 2, finding a comfortable position, step 3, coming up with a central phrase that embodies where you are now and where you aspire to be, and step 4, setting a timer, beginning to take your slow, deep breaths in and out, and then incorporating your central phrase. I think that will be sufficient in helping you not only relax and feel more calm, but also working that muscle that allows you to choose where you want your awareness to be focused. Hopefully that helps. And if there's any questions, you don't have any questions?
I do.
Oh, Melinda has questions. So if you feel like you got it from here, just shut it off. But I'm going to answer Melinda's questions.